I worked the night shift at the hospital. I'm a respiratory therapist. It was just another quiet night, or at least that's what I thought. I always did these shifts to balance work and school, but everything changed about a month ago. On the third night, I started hearing a faint tapping sound. It echoed down the hallway outside the ICU. I thought it might be the old pipes. Maybe a loose vent. The sound kept going, though, and it felt like it was in a pattern. It made my skin crawl. I didn't want to think too much about it, so I brushed it off. The next week, the tapping turned into whispers. I was standing by an empty patient room during my break when I heard my name. Softly, it was almost a hiss. I felt a chill run through me and froze. I looked around. Just me in the quiet hospital. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling something was watching me. As the days passed, I noticed shadows moving in my peripheral vision. I tried to ignore them. One night, I found myself drawn to the old children's ward. I knew it had been closed years ago, after something bad happened there. The air was cold as I walked down the corridor. My hands felt clammy. I knew I shouldn't go in, but I pushed the door open. The darkness inside wrapped around me like a cold blanket. I could have sworn I heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. I turned around fast, but I was alone, and the laughter faded. I left quickly, my heart racing. On my next shift, I was in the break room. I tried to clear my head, but the whispers came back. They filled the room, and a shiver ran down my spine. I felt something behind me. I didn't want to turn around. Finally, I forced myself to look. Nothing. Just the empty chairs and machines. My breath sped up, and I felt like I would choke. Then came the last night. I was in the ICU when I saw a figure at the end of the hall. It looked like a person, but I couldn't make out any details. It stood there, not moving. I wanted to say something, but my throat felt tight. I blinked, and it was gone. I shook my head, wondering if I was losing it. Now, a month later, I still can't explain what happened. Was it stress? Or something darker echoing through those walls? I don't know. Every time I walk into that hospital, the memories haunt me. I still think about that tapping, the whispers, the shadows. I keep wondering about the figure I saw. I can't shake the feeling that there's something left behind in those halls, something I've yet to understand. Even now, I'm uneasy about returning. The night shift came again, and I tried to convince myself that I could handle it. I walked through the familiar halls, my heart racing with each echo of my footsteps. It was darker than usual, the lights flickering as if they were stuttering back to life. I had taken the precaution of bringing a book to help distract me during slower moments, but I barely opened it. I felt on edge. As I checked the monitors in the ICU, I couldn't shake the lingering unease. I kept glancing towards the children's ward. It felt like a magnet, pulling me towards its dark past. I needed to know if the whispers would show themselves again. Would the laughter return, or had I just been imagining it all? Around midnight, I couldn't hold back any longer. I slipped away from the ICU, down the dimly lit corridor. The air was thick with silence. I stood outside the door to the children's ward and hesitated. My hand trembled as I reached for the handle. Taking a breath, I pushed the door open. The room was cloaked in darkness, the moonlight barely reaching through grimy windows. I remembered the warmth of those halls when they were filled with life. Now, it felt like a tomb. I stepped inside, and the door creaked shut behind me, sealing me in. I strained my ears, searching for any sign of the laughter I had heard before. Just as I thought it would be silent, I heard it again, a soft giggle. It was faint, but unmistakable. I whirled around, heart pounding. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the suffocating dark. "Come play," a voice said, echoing like a whisper through the room. It was childlike, innocent. I felt a cold sweat break on my forehead. I should have run, but something inside me pushed me forward. I wanted to understand. In the corner, I spotted a dusty old toy, a teddy bear, its button eyes glinting in the dark. I reached for it, pulling it closer. That's when I noticed something else under the bed, a flash of white. I crouched down, heart racing again. It was a piece of paper, crumpled and yellowed with age. I unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing, but the images made my stomach turn. Children were depicted with wide eyes, mouths open in silent screams. I looked back at the room, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a blizzard. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered until they finally went out. Panic seized me. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight feature. My pulse thundered in my ears. The whispers didn't stop. They changed into frantic cries, then into laughter that echoed off the walls. I stumbled backward, feeling trapped. Suddenly I felt a soft tug on my sleeve. I swung around, but no one was there. I didn't care to call out this time. I turned to run. Just as I reached the door, I felt fingers brush my arm, cold and fleeting, like a whisper through my skin. I burst into the hallway, gasping. My eyes darted around, looking for someone, anyone. Then I noticed the nurse's station was empty. The screens flickered in the low light, showing patients who weren't there. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was all too much. I knew I had to leave. That's when I saw it again. The figure at the end of the hall, standing motionless. Panic surged through me. I was tired of the fear that clung to me like a shadow. I took a step forward to confront it, ready to demand answers. All I could do was hope it didn't vanish again. But as I got closer, I saw it was slightly transparent, almost glowing, and for a moment, I thought it might be smiling. I stopped in my tracks. Then everything crumbled into darkness again. When the lights flickered back to life, I felt disoriented. The figure at the end of the hall seemed to have vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of dread. I tightened my grip on my phone, its light barely cutting through the shadows. I forced myself to breathe, trying to silence the erratic beat of my heart. I took a few tentative steps forward, my feet whispering against the linoleum. The silence felt louder now, punctuated only by the distant machine beeps from the ICU. Did I really want to chase after something I couldn't understand? I glanced back towards the children's ward, the door still ajar, inviting yet ominous. The memory of the giggles echoed in my mind, a haunting tune. As I approached the nurse's station, I felt the weight of the night pressing down on me. I hoped to find one of my co-workers there, but the station remained empty. I leaned on the counter, peering into the small rooms surrounding the hall. Each one was vacant, the beds unoccupied and immaculate. It made no sense. Then I heard it again, a soft laughter, just barely audible but unmistakable. I turned sharply toward the source, where the sound seemed to be coming from room 312. My stomach twisted as I made my way down the hall. I hesitated outside the door, the laughter now silenced as if waiting for my next move. It felt wrong to enter. Still, curiosity tugged at me. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the cool metal of the door. I could hear faint whispers like children whispering secrets, and I felt a shiver inch down my spine. Finally, I pushed the door open. The room was dark, but the faint silhouette of a small figure sat on the bed. My breath hitched as I switched on my flashlight, aiming it at the shape beneath the covers. It was just a child, maybe 5 or 6 years old, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. "Why are you here?" the child asked, voice small and tremulous. I work here," I stammered, taken aback. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The child didn't respond. Instead, they pointed to the corner of the room. I followed their gesture, and my stomach dropped. In the shadows, I saw 2 more figures. Children, maybe twins, standing close together. They looked straight at me, faces blank as if they didn't understand what was happening, yet their eyes gleamed with an unsettling brightness. "Come play," one of them whispered, and chills raced across my skin. "What?" I blurted out, feeling trapped between the urge to flee and the desperate need for answers. But before I could gather my thoughts, the lights overhead flickered again. The figures quivered like a mirage. I blinked, and standing before me, the children transformed. Their little faces twisted into expressions of fear, mouths now silent, but eyes wide with dread. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the room went dark once more, plunging me into pure blackness. I felt warmth against my skin, a fleeting presence brushing against me, and I could hear the children's voices crying out, not with laughter, but with pure terror. Just as abruptly the lights returned. I stumbled back, my heart racing, but when I looked towards the bed, the room was empty. The little figures had vanished. Something whispered behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was void of life. Alone, my mind raced. What had just happened? I was left trembling, trying to piece together the fragments of the encounter. And then, I saw it. On the edge of my vision, a figure watching me from down the hall. It was back. The energy shifted, and suddenly, I felt like prey. I couldn't breathe. I had to confront it, but fear locked my feet in place. I didn't know what it wanted. That only made moving toward it even harder. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of my own vulnerability. The figure at the end of the hall was still there, an indistinct shadow flickering against the harsh fluorescent lights. I could barely make out its shape, but the feeling of being watched wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. "Okay, get it together," I whispered to myself. I took a step forward. My feet felt leaden, the sound of my shoes echoing down the corridor. Another step followed, then another. Each one felt like a tiny rebellion against fear. As I approached the figure, I took a deep breath, forcing my legs to move faster. The closer I got, the more I could sense a change in the air. It felt charged, crackling with energy that made my skin prickle. "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. The figure didn't respond, but it shifted slightly, the outline barely changing. Was it a trick of the light? I strained my eyes, trying to distinguish reality from illusion. Suddenly, without warning, it dashed into a room just to my left, room 314. Compelled by a mixture of dread and curiosity, I followed. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop myself. The door was slightly ajar, a thin stream of light spilling out into the hallway. I pushed the door open and froze. The room was filled with toys scattered across the floor, brightly colored shapes in stark contrast to the sterile white walls. Laughter spilled out of the darkness, a sound so familiar yet alien. "Come play," echoed in my ears again, but this time it carried a sharper edge, a hint of impatience. "Where are you?" I croaked, the words barely clawing their way out of my throat. As I stepped further inside, the light flickered once more, revealing a scene that made my blood run cold. Seated on the floor, surrounded by the toys, were 3 children. No, 4. Each one stared at me with wide eyes, grinning in a way that didn't seem right. Their lips moved, but the sounds that emerged were nothing but jumbled whispers. I couldn't understand what they were saying, and the urge to flee surged within me. "Are you lost?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mind raced, scrambling for logic amidst the chaos. Why were they here? Why did they seem so detached from the world around them? Then, from behind the children, a shadow materialized. It slithered along the wall, dark and elongated, until it took form. Tall and ominous, it stood cloaked in the dim light. It watched me with an intensity that rendered me paralyzed. "Leave them alone," I shouted, feeling brave yet terrified. The moment the words left my mouth, the children turned their heads in unison, a single entity filled with terror. The shadow didn't move, but the atmosphere thickened, every second stretching longer than the last. In a split second, the laughter erupted again, but this time it morphed into a wailing scream that shattered the silence. I staggered back, heart racing, and stumbled into the doorway. My hands grasped the frame for support as the children stood, their expressions shifting to something dark and hollow. I turned to run. As I barreled through the threshold, the air felt like it was closing in around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I darted back into the hallway, the familiar world swirling around me, but the darkness remained. The figure reappeared, not at the end of the hall but right in front of me, closer than I'd ever seen. My mind reeled, and I collided with it, the impact knocking the air from my lungs. I stumbled back, but there was no escape. Between gasps, I choked out, "What do you want?" Then, everything went dark again. All I could hear was the echo of my ragged breaths and the soft hissing of whispers, too quiet to discern. The dread washed over me anew, and I closed my eyes, wishing it would all just disappear. But when I opened them, I was not alone. My eyes fluttered open, and as the haze cleared, I found myself back in room 314. The toys lay scattered around me, just as I remembered. But now, the laughter had faded into an eerie silence, and the children were gone. Confused, I sat up and scanned my surroundings. The walls felt closer, as if they were closing in, adorned with peeling paint and scratch marks that seemed to take on a life of their own. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Where had they gone? And why was I still here? I got to my feet, steadying myself against the wall. The air was thick, heavy with a vague sense of foreboding. I took a cautious step toward the door, but as I approached, a sudden chill raced up my spine. A flicker from the corner of my eye made my blood run cold. There it was, the shadow. It coalesced near the window, pooling in the dim light as if waiting for me. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. "Leave me alone," I whispered, though I wasn't sure who I was speaking to anymore. Then I saw it. The shadow shifted, refining into a more defined shape, a figure that resembled one of the children. Its eyes were deep voids, empty and profound, as it beckoned me with one ghostly hand. "Come play," it murmured. The same words from before, but stretched out in a drawn-out tone that sent shivers down my spine. "No!" I shouted, my voice breaking. I spun around, desperate to find a way out. The door felt deceptively far now. I could hear the whispers rising again, a cacophony of voices, all begging, demanding, urging. "Stay with us." In that moment of weakness, when dread overpowered my reasoning, I bolted. I threw the door open and barreled back into the hall, the darkness swirling behind me like a predator closing in. I needed to escape this nightmare, to reach the exit. I dashed toward the stairwell, but the shadows seemed to pulse around me. It was as if they were alive, reaching out with tendrils of darkness, pulling me back with every frantic stride. My chest tightened. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Help!" I cried out, but the words felt like they were swallowed whole by the oppressive silence. Just as I reached the stairwell, my foot landed on something solid. A small toy, a bright red ball. It rolled under my foot, causing me to lose balance and tumble. I hit the ground hard, the sharpness of pain jolting me back to reality. As I lay there, gasping for breath, I caught the slightest sound, a faint giggle echoing from the shadows. I looked up, squinting through the dim light, and realized the hallway was filled with faces. Kids. They peered out from the darkness, their vacant smiles wide and menacing. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding like a war drum. The figures drew closer, their body language pulsing with energy. I could see their eyes now, reflecting a mixture of mischief and something darker, something hungry. "Are you lost?" they chimed in unison, their voices harmonizing. I backed up until I pressed against the cold, unforgiving wall. "No, I'm not lost. I need to get out." Panic flooded my senses as my mind spiraled. Then, just as they reached for me, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. A different sound, harsh and jarring. Their attention snapped toward the source, momentarily distracted. I seized the opportunity. With every ounce of strength, I dashed down the hallway, propelled by adrenaline. I didn't look back. All I knew was that I had to escape before they turned their gaze back on me. But as I sprinted past the flickering lights, I felt something cold brush my cheek. I turned my head just in time to glimpse a fading shadow, a reminder that I was far from safe. That's when I saw it. In the distance, a door stood ajar, light spilling out, and with it, the promise of escape. But were those soft whispers of laughter coming from inside? I hesitated for just a moment. The laughter echoed again, soft, inviting, yet laced with an undertone that felt wrong. What kind of clinic has children's laughter in the middle of the night? My heart raced as I weighed my options. Stay in the hallway with the shadows closing in, or step into the light that beckoned me. I pushed through the door, breathless, my instincts screaming at me to run. The room was a stark contrast to the darkness outside. Pure white walls, bright overhead lights, and a single bed in the center. It all felt sterile, too clean, almost surreal after the oppressive atmosphere of the hallway. A small table stood near the bed, cluttered with crayon drawings, colorful, cheerful shapes that seemed at odds with everything I'd experienced. As I stepped further inside, I caught sight of a figure sitting on the bed. A girl, no older than 7, was drawing. She looked up at me with wide eyes, so bright they cut through the gloom. Her hair was messy, yet somehow it framed her face angelically. "Do you want to play with us?" she asked, her voice sweet but tinged with something darker. I hesitated, taken aback by her presence. "Where are the others? The kids from the hallway?" The girl's smile faded just a little. "They're busy," she said, glancing toward the door as if she expected them to follow me in. A chill spread through me. "Busy doing what?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Her gaze returned to the papers in front of her, and she resumed drawing. "Playing." I stepped back, unease crawling under my skin. The laughter from the hallway surged again, sounding like it was getting closer. I turned to the door, ready to slip back into the darkness, but the girl's hand shot up. "Wait, what's your name?" she asked, tilting her head. "Lila," I replied, my throat dry. "I'm Emily," she chirped, and for a moment, something in her eyes reminded me of innocence. But then I heard it again, sharper this time. The crashing sound, mixed with the distant echoes of children calling, growing louder, more demanding. "Emily, I have to go," I said urgently, moving toward the door. "Why don't you want to play?" she asked, her tone shifting. The sweet facade began to peel away, revealing something darker. "You can stay forever." Panic surged through me, and I swung the door open, darting back into the hallway. The shadows were thicker now, swirling like a storm ready to consume me. I could hear whispers weaving in and out of my thoughts. "Stay. Help. Forever." I pressed against the wall, trying to push myself away from the encroaching darkness. My breathing came in quick gasps. I turned back towards the room, thinking I could grab Emily and escape together, but the door had slammed shut. Suddenly, strong hands gripped my shoulders from behind, and I whipped around, startled. A nurse stood there, her eyes wide and wild. "Why are you here?" she blurted, panic etched on her face. "You shouldn't be here." "What's going on?" I shouted, pleading for answers through my fear. Before she could respond, the lights flickered violently. Everything froze, for just a moment. Then they went out completely. A suffocating darkness wrapped around me, and I couldn't hear anything but silence. I was utterly alone, and something told me the shadows were waiting. Then, a faint whisper broke through the void. "Come back!" I stumbled forward. What was this place? What was happening? "Lila!" a voice echoed, familiar yet unsettling. I turned toward it, the darkness swallowing me whole. I stood in the darkness, the oppressive silence pressing against my ears. I could feel the whispering shadows curling around me, suffocating every rational thought. "Lila!" The voice echoed again, piercing through my fear. It was closer now. I couldn't tell if it comforted me or terrified me. Before I could make a decision, the lights flickered back on, then stabilized. I blinked against the harsh brightness and scanned the hallway. It was empty. The faint sound of laughter still floated through the air, but now it seemed distorted, as if coming from two places at once. I took a step forward, unsure of where to go. The nurse had vanished as suddenly as she appeared, leaving me in the hallway, where the lingering scent of antiseptic mixed with something sweeter that I couldn't quite place. I glanced toward the door of the room where I had seen Emily. It stood ajar, swaying slightly, taunting me. Despite every instinct screaming at me to run, I crept towards it. "Emily!" I called out, my voice trembling. No response, but the laughter returned, echoing from the other end of the corridor. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open wider. The room was empty now, the drawings scattered across the table like forgotten memories. I stepped inside, the chill of the space wrapping around me. Then I spotted something out of the corner of my eye, a piece of paper fluttering on the floor. I picked it up. It was a crayon drawing depicting several children. They were playing outside, and I realized with a jolt that one of them looked just like Emily. The others were faceless, but they all seemed happy, trapped in a whimsical world. A knot tightened in my stomach as I noticed the date scrawled at the bottom, 10 years ago. "Lila!" The voice again, more insistent now, echoing through the hallway. Panic surged in me. I was being drawn back towards it. I glanced over my shoulder at the doorway. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving at the edge of the light, hunched over, peeking in. My heart raced. "Who's there?" I called, even though every fiber of my being urged me to run. The figure stepped into the light and I gasped. It was a boy, maybe 8 or 9, with hollow eyes and an unsettling smile. "Come play," he chirped. "We need more friends." Before I could respond, the lights flickered again, but this time they didn't just die. They flickered like a strobe, illuminating the boy's face and revealing a twisted grin. My heart pounded in my chest. Something was terribly wrong. Was he another child trapped here? I stumbled back toward the hallway, but the boy took a step closer. "Don't you want to be with us forever?" I turned and ran, the laughter growing louder, the shadows stretching toward me. I sprinted down the corridor, desperate to escape. I had to find a way out, had to get away from the laughter, the voices, and whatever horrors were lurking in the dark. Then I reached another door. This one was marked emergency exit. I pushed it hard, praying it wouldn't be locked. It swung open. A rush of cold air greeted me as I burst outside into the night. But as I stepped into the dark, my breath hitched. I wasn't alone. Shadows moved around me, whispering with malicious delight. I turned back to the door, but it had slammed shut behind me, trapping me in this nightmarish reality. "Come back, Lila!" The laughter echoed, and I realized I hadn't escaped at all. The cold air bit at my skin as I staggered away from the door, feet crunching on gravel. My heart raced. I glanced around, desperate for any sign of escape. The darkness seemed more alive out here, dancing around me with whispers that clawed at my sanity. "Lila!" The voice was right behind me now, so close I could almost feel the breath on my neck. I turned, my eyes wide, but there was nothing, only the shadows twisting and writhing. I forced myself to move, to put space between me and that terrible laughter. I took a few shaky steps forward, squinting into the night. I could make out the outlines of trees beyond the gravel path, their branches reaching like skeletal hands. I needed to get away from the building. I needed to find help. But as I moved, the laughter grew louder, more menacing. It surrounded me, echoing off the walls of the hospital that loomed behind me. I felt like a deer caught in the headlights, frozen in fear. I had to push through it. I had to find a way out. Suddenly, a loud crash made me jump. I whipped around to see a window on the second floor shatter, the jagged glass scattering like dangerous confetti to the ground below. A silhouette appeared behind the jagged opening, a figure wrapped in darkness, and then it was gone, swallowed by the shadows. Breath stuck in my throat. I sprinted towards the trees, my limbs moving against their own will. The shadows seemed to pulse around me, reaching out, trying to grasp my clothes, my skin, but I dodged every whispering touch. I needed to get deeper into the woods, away from this nightmare. As I reached the edge of the trees, the laughter stopped abruptly. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. I hesitated, inching forward. I could barely see the path ahead, but something caught my eye, a faint glow coming from deeper within. Instinct told me it wasn't safe, but curiosity drew me closer. I stepped cautiously along the narrow path, the underbrush scratching at my ankles. The glow flickered like a candle, throwing eerie shadows among the trees. Just as I was about to turn back, I heard it. A soft, familiar voice. "Help me, Lila." "Emily?" I breathed, the name barely escaping my lips. I felt pulled towards the light, my heart pounding. I called out, barely holding on to hope. "Where are you?" The voice whispered again, clearer this time. "This way." I pushed through the branches, panic simmering in my chest. Then I saw her. A flickering outline of a girl stood illuminated by that strange light. Emily's familiar features were twisted with fear, her eyes wide. Was she really there? "Lila!" she cried. "You have to get away from here." Just then, I felt a cold hand grasp my wrist. I turned, my stomach dropping. It was the boy from the hospital. "You can't leave," he hissed, his smile widening in the dark. Everything inside me screamed to run, but the shadows around him stretched like claws. I was trapped. And then it hit me. The laughter had stopped, but there were no footsteps. It was just the darkness closing in. "Lila!" I tore my gaze from the boy. The glow behind me pulsed again, and I took a step back, feeling the ground shift underneath me. I had to decide. Help Emily, or face what was creeping in the dark. Before I could breathe, everything went dim. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. Fear wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. I could still feel the boy's grip, but it was gone, replaced by the chill of the night air. Panic surged through me. "Emily?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. "Are you still there?" No answer came. Just silence, heavy, expectant. I bit my lip, weighing my options. In that moment, the air shifted. The faint glow flickered again, illuminating my surroundings. I could just make out the silhouettes of trees, their branches swaying gently. But there was something else. An object lay on the ground at my feet. I crouched down to get a better look. It was a small silver locket, half buried in the dirt, glinting under the pale light. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. The cool metal felt oddly familiar, but something deep inside me warned that it was not an object I wanted to hold on to. Then I remembered Emily's urgency. I stuffed the locket into my pocket and turned back toward the glow, stepping cautiously through the underbrush. I needed to find her. Her warning echoed in my mind. "You have to get away from here." The glow drew me forward, and I heard a rustle, branches snapping underfoot. My heart thundered. I spun around, but the woods seemed empty, the shadows undisturbed. Was it just my imagination? Or was something lurking just beyond my line of sight? "Lila!" The voice returned, more frantic this time. "Please!" I stumbled toward the sound, scratching my arms on the sharp branches, but I couldn't stop now. The urgency in her voice drove me. "I'm coming, Emily!" I cried out, desperation fueling my steps. Suddenly, I felt a presence beside me. My breath caught in my throat. I turned quickly, and there he was, the boy again. He loomed in the darkness, getting closer. "I told you," he began, but the ground beneath me quaked, sending me staggering backward. The glow wavered. "Stay away from me," I shouted, moving back as his twisted smile widened. Behind him, shadows shifted, thickening like a storm cloud. "Lila!" Emily's voice fractured the tension. "Trust me, this way." For a split second, doubt flooded through me. Could I really trust her? Yet something in her voice ignited a flicker of faith. I turned my back on the boy, heart racing as I bolted toward the glow. Just as I reached the edge of the light, something dragged painfully at my ankles, rooting me in place. I glanced down and gasped. Shadowy tendrils snaked around my legs, creeping upward, slippery and cold. I pulled, but it felt like they were pulling me down. "Lila!" Emily was closer now, her figure more defined in the light. "You have to move." I strained against the darkness wrapping around me. I could feel the weight of fear pressing down, but with one final heave, I broke free and dashed into the light. In that moment, the glow brightened, enveloping me like warmth. And then everything went black once more. All I felt was the pulse of something deep beneath the earth, a heartbeat marking the silence that descended. I couldn't help but wonder, what was waiting for me in the darkness? I woke up suddenly, gasping as if surfacing from deep water. The air around me felt heavy, thick with antiseptic. I blinked against the harsh ceiling lights, my vision swimming. It took a moment to remember where I was. The hospital. I struggled to sit up, my body protesting. My heart raced as fragmented memories flitted through my mind. Dark hallways, shadowy figures, laughter echoing off the walls. I glanced around, but for the moment everything was still. No whispers, no shadows, just the relentless hum of machines. After a while I managed to drag myself to a nearby nurse's station. Everything felt surreal, as if I was still caught in some foggy dream. The clock on the wall read 3:27 a.m. Had I only been gone for a short time? I reached out to press the call button, but before my finger touched it, the nurse emerged from the back, her face pale. "You're awake," she exclaimed, relief washing over her. "You've been out for hours. We thought we'd have to call in a doctor." "What happened?" I mumbled, still shaken, memories swirling in my mind like a chaotic storm. "I was in the children's ward." The nurse's expression shifted, concern etched on her face. "You shouldn't have gone there. The children's ward. It's been closed for years." "But I heard them," I insisted, panic rising again. "They were calling for me. Emily. I need to find her." She shook her head. "No one has been in there for over a decade since—" She hesitated, glancing around as if ensuring no one else was listening. "After the incident." My heart sank. All the laughter, all the figures I had seen, were they echoes of something that truly happened? Something tragic? "What incident?" I pressed. The nurse hesitated again, her eyes darting away as if the memory weighed too heavily. "It's hard to explain," she finally said. "Some say it was an accident, but many believe— well, it's best left alone." "Best left alone?" I echoed, frustration bubbling within me. "But I have to go back. I saw her. Emily." "Lila," she said softly, concern in her voice. "The children who were there, those who don't leave, they don't walk out, you understand? It's dangerous to dwell on things that don't fade." A chill ran through me. "What are you saying?" But before she could answer, a loud crash echoed through the hospital, rattling the walls. My heart raced again. I turned to see why, and through the glass doors of the nurse's station, I caught a glimpse of something, a shadow darting at the edge of my vision just beyond the corridor leading to the children's ward. My breath quickened as the whispers returned, faint but unmistakable, curling around my mind. "Lila, come back." "I have to go," I said, voice trembling. I wrenched the door open and dashed toward the hallway, ignoring the nurse calling after me. My feet barely hit the ground as I moved, propelled by a mix of fear and determination. The corridor lay in flickering light, shadows trembling along the walls. I reached the door to the children's ward, heart hammering in my chest as I grasped the handle. It swung open without resistance, the darkness unfurling before me like a gaping mouth. The laughter rippled in the silence, louder now, echoing jubilantly. I stepped inside, the air thick with nostalgia and dread. I didn't want to believe what was unfolding, yet a deep yearning pushed me forward. "Emily," I shouted, my voice swallowed by the unforgiving darkness. There she stood, glimmering faintly, just beyond a flickering light. "Lila, please." Her voice was fragile, full of desperation. "Help us." Before I could say anything, the walls shuddered, shadows closing in like a consuming storm. A whirlwind of voices enveloped me, din rising and falling, tainted with playful malice. "Stay. Come play. Forever." "No," I shouted against the cacophony. I turned back toward the exit, but the door had vanished, swallowed by the shadows. I felt hands grasping at me, ethereal fingers tugging, urging. "Come back," they called, their tones merging until it felt as if the very air vibrated with their desperate longing. Without thinking, I ran deeper into the ward, shoving past fragments of toys and crayon drawings that flared back to life with vivid colors. One last push brought me into the heart of the room, the very bed where all this began. Emily stood at the foot, eyes shining like flickering stars caught in a whirlwind. "You can't leave me," she cried, fear spilling over her words, spilling into the very fabric of my reality. Everything converged. Shadows, laughter, children's whispers, and a gnawing emptiness that seemed to demand my presence. I could feel them wanting me to join, to become one of them. "No!" I gasped, feeling myself slipping. Even now, as I stood, a heartbeat away from darkness, I could sense the pull of those who had not found rest. But above the thrum of panic, I heard Emily's voice shining bright. "You have to choose," she instilled fervently. "You can save me or lose yourself." A solitary tear slipped down my cheek. I wanted to help. I wanted to believe I could save her. But deep down, I also felt that part of this nightmare belonged to me. With trembling hands, I clutched the locket in my pocket, pulling it out as light flickered in response. "Love," I whispered, my voice shaking as I clutched the broken memories. "We'll always find a way." At those words, the shadows paused, stilling for an instant. The laughter quieted, the children's faces emerging, radiant and alive, suspended between two realms. In that heartbeat, I saw it. An exit. A fracture in the darkness revealing a path back to the light. There was a choice to make. "Emily, come on!" I shouted, reaching out. "We can leave!" But she hesitated, fear shadowing her face. Behind her, the darkness writhed, beckoning her back. The choice felt unbearable. Would she come with me or be trapped forever in this cycle? "Lila," she whispered, torn between the light and dark. Our eyes locked for what felt like an eternity. In that moment, I understood. I could not save her. I could only choose to save myself. With every ounce of strength, I tore my gaze from her and ran. The shadows surged, gripping my legs as I surged forward. I felt their cold presence swirl around me as I stumbled back toward the light. I could sense Emily watching me, lingering on the edge of both hope and despair. As I raced through the fracture, I emerged into blinding light. The veil of darkness dissipating behind me, sweeping away whispers long forgotten. I strained to gaze back, to see if she had followed, but all was swallowed in a pulse of white. Then I was outside, gasping in the cold night air. Behind me loomed the hospital, grim, silent, and still. Just like that, I was alone. I moved from the place that had held me captive, my mind swirling with unanswered questions. Had any of it been real? Or was it just a figment of exhaustion and stress? Would Emily be okay, trapped in that slumbering darkness? The uncertainty weighed heavy, settling uneasily in my chest. In the end, I fled. But the truth of the night would linger, haunting the edges of my thoughts. I didn't look back as I walked away from the building. I didn't want to see if she found her way to the light, because I wasn't sure I wanted to know if it would last. Sometimes that darkness called to me, its echoes threading through my mind. Even now, I sometimes dream of shadows and laughter. I can still hear soft whispers calling my name, and though I left the hospital behind, I know the darkness will always whisper. It's a part of who I am now, something forever etched into my being. What happened that night lingers, bittersweet and unreadable, a chapter unending.